Million years after humanity's extinction, a mother gave birth to a worthless child before being struck by lightning, and the ugly baby lost all of his bodily parts except for his disgusting skull, because on the day he was born, his father found God in a ghetto temple. But as God tried to run away, he killed him with his sword and tried to make a deal with the heavenly demons, swearing to sacrifice his firstborn to become the strongest leader in the world. So, after Daigo told the midwife to kill his son and hide all the evidence, the fat ass witch made it to a river where she was about to drown the useless child. But when she saw a boat in the distance, she decided to cast him down the river instead. As soon as the disgusting hag pushed him away, a legendary demon appeared to devour him. However, an ugly, blind elder sensed the presence of the demon and used his blade to slash it down with a single strike before realizing there was a baby in the boat with God's ancient power radiating from his insides. On the other side of the world, a man dragged a pathetic victim to crucify him along with all the other enemy soldiers they defeated. But when he saw his wife getting accidentally killed by his own knights, the man couldn't bear it anymore and decided to ice-sky himself by passionately hugging the ground. However, the man somehow survived and became colorblind. As the man approached a strange boat, he discovered the mutilated body of a baby that was somehow still alive. Over the years, he took it upon himself to raise the grotesque child. He crafted artificial limbs and skin, but the child's inability to feel pain or express emotions unnerved him. Naming him Hyakimaru, derived from the Japanese word for demon, the man dedicated his life to training him as a ruthless warrior. Hyakimaru grew into a relentless soldier, slaying countless demons. One fateful day, drenched in the blood of his enemies, his godlike powers awakened, and his missing leg regenerated. By the age of 16, the man regretted not teaching Hyakimaru anything beyond killing. But in an unexpected moment of tenderness, Hyakimaru touched his own face for the first time and embraced the man who had raised him like a father. Then, without a word, he left, disappearing into the world for what seemed an eternity. Years later, while wandering, Hyakimaru encountered a boy named Dororo being brutally beaten by 3 thugs after stealing from them. As the leader prepared to drown Dororo, the boy fought back by hurling a rock into the man's eye. Enraged, the thug ordered his men to fetch a sword to kill him. Before they could act, a demon emerged from the river and devoured the leader in a single strike. Panic set in, and one of the lackeys fled, but the demon caught and consumed him too. As the beast turned its attention to Dororo, Hyakimaru intervened. He severed the demon's arm and tossed Dororo to safety. The demon lunged repeatedly, but Hyakimaru evaded its attacks, focusing on destroying the bridge they stood on. With relentless precision, he struck the bridge's foundations, causing it to collapse, burying the demon beneath the rubble. Lightning split the sky as Hyakimaru's mask fell, revealing his newly regenerated skin. At that moment, another distant demon was destroyed. Elsewhere, Daigo's second son presented his mother with a captured dove, but her heart remained heavy, longing for her lost firstborn. She gazed at a statue of the goddess who had once sacrificed herself for their family. Meanwhile, Hyakimaru and Dororo began traveling together. Dororo soon realized that although Hyakimaru was blind, he could perceive the outlines of souls, identifying demons by the fiery red glow of their spirits. Their journey brought them to a nearby village. As night fell, they sought shelter in an old stable. However, their rest was interrupted by a mysterious figure, a demon that rang the bells of hell before vanishing into the night without a word. The following morning, the chief took them to meet Lady Bandai, the priestess of the village. When they got there, the priestess apologized for her appearance, saying that she hasn't been able to use her legs after Tyrone blew her back out. But although Dororo thought she was beautiful, Hyakimaru felt the presence of a demon and began trying to attack her. However, Dororo held him off while the other villagers came to take him away, throwing both of them in prison. As Dororo questioned why Hyakimaru was attacking the alluring woman, a blind elder revealed himself, explaining that he had been imprisoned for the same reasons. The elder recognized Hyakimaru as the castaway child and revealed he too could perceive the souls of demons. At that moment, both sensed the presence of another demon. Hyakimaru swiftly severed its arm and leaped into a well with moon, navigating a network of hidden tunnels. Their path led to the priestess's chamber, where Hyakimaru shattered her door. The priestess unveiled her demonic form and countered his charge with a whip-like tail, striking him back. She unleashed a flurry of attacks with her many arms, but Hyakimaru closed the distance and drove his swords into her eyes. Before he could finish her, the village chief intervened, restraining him and allowing the demon to flee. Hayakimaru pursued the demon into the forest, but Bandai, a powerful demon, ensnared him with bamboo traps. As she rang the ominous bells of hell, Hayakimaru vanished and reappeared from above, striking her head with a decisive blow. Bandai momentarily reverted to her alluring human form, revealing that one of her kind had failed to sacrifice him. However, before she could say more, Hayakimaru pierced her face, ending her for good. The bells of hell tolled one final time before Bandai disintegrated. In the aftermath, Dororo discovered thousands of gold coins buried beneath the earth, wealth stolen from the adventurers Bandai had slain. The village chief confessed that he had struck a deal with the demons to ensure the village's survival, trading lives for gold. As Bandai and another demon perished, Hayakimaru's nervous system regenerated, restoring his hearing. That night in the forest, the cacophony of animal sounds overwhelmed him. Dororo, puzzled by Hayakimaru's sensitivity in the silent woods, suggested he cover his ears and avoid fighting until he adjusted. Suddenly, Hayakimaru sensed a new presence in the darkness. A massive bird swooped between them, casting a shadow that signaled another looming threat. Immediately, he drew his sword, and as the monster returned, he narrowly evaded it. However, it flew towards them again, nearly snatching him up, and the noises from falling leaves distracted him, allowing the bird to knock him into the ground. As it returned, Hayakimaru managed to slap it, but the bird tried carrying him away, and he utilized the opportunity to wound it. But as it returned to end him, Moon appeared at that moment and cut it to pieces in an instant. Just then, Dororo noticed that Hayakimaru was spaced out and tried returning him to his senses, but he was pretty much dead on the inside. The following morning, as Hayakimaru woke up, he began hearing a singing voice and followed it to the river. As he arrived, he realized that the singer was a girl, and the purity in her soul drew him closer to her. As he tried to touch her, she discovered he was blind, but he nearly passed out in her arms. She noticed Dororo and Moon, thinking they were probably his companions. As they settled in an old abandoned temple, they realized that Hayakimaru was very sick from his injuries, and Mooney said he was probably starting to become a real human. As Mio arrived, she told them to stay until Hayakimaru was recovered and revealed half a dozen orphan kids she was caring for. As the children approached, Mio introduced them as survivors of the war. Take, stepping into a leadership role, instructed everyone to leave and urged Mio to rest before starting her night shift. Later, Dororo offered to help Mio with her duties, but Take declined, expressing his determination to work as hard as his sister. When Dororo noticed Mooney preparing to leave, the boy explained he was scouting a safe path through the forest and promised to return soon. In Daigo's village, a messenger informed him that the Saki clan had gathered at their border and supplies were dwindling due to the prolonged drought. Mina appeared, remarking that history seemed to be repeating itself at the temple. Meanwhile, Mio checked on Hayakimaru and discovered he was suffering from a high fever. Realizing he needed medicine, she promised to bring him healing remedies after her night shift. As she began to sing, Hayakimaru silently wished she would stay with him forever. While exploring the forest, Mooney stumbled upon a path near a creek and thought it could serve as a safe haven for Mio and the orphans. However, his hope faded when he sensed a demon lurking in a nearby hole, deeming the area unsafe. The next morning, Mio returned to the village and found Hayakimaru waiting outside. She handed him the medicine she had obtained, but he gestured for her to sing instead. Dororo chimed in, suggesting her voice might help awaken Hayakimaru's mind. As Mio sang, Mooney arrived and shared his discovery of the creek path, suggesting it as a potential refuge when the war broke out. However, he warned that a powerful demon inhabited the area and that it wouldn't be safe until the creature was dealt with. Hearing this, Hayakimaru immediately headed toward the forest, ignoring Dororo's attempts to stop him. Mooney, worried about Hayakimaru's fragile state, decided to follow and offer support. Left behind, Mio revealed her plan to work for both villages on the brink of war, determined to earn money quickly. Dororo, concerned for her safety, vowed to watch over her and protect her if danger arose. That evening, as he trailed her into the forest, he realized that her work was developing a plot with the soldiers and was depressed by what he saw and the amount of things she endured every day. At the same time, Hayakimaru and Mooney arrived at the large hole. As they spotted the demon, Hayakimaru drew his swords, but Mooney realized he was still sick from his injuries. Mooney tried suggesting that he waits until he's recovered, but the monster began drilling the ground, and the sand pulled them deep into the hole. After jumping off the rocks, Hyakkimaru flew with the monster, and Muni slashed it from behind, forcing it to turn its attention. As soon as it was distracted, Hyakkimaru stabbed its head, but the demon caught him and began pulling him deep into the ground. Luckily, Muni managed to save him, but Hyakkimaru began screaming from a terrible pain as half of his leg was lost to the demon. That night, as Dororo returned to the temple, he came across Muni and Hyakkimaru. As he noticed Hyakkimaru's severed leg, he fell from the shock, and Muni revealed that it was eaten by the demon. However, when he realized that Hyakkimaru was actually groaning from the pain, Muni told him that he had now also gained his ability to speak. In the morning, when Mio arrived, she found Hyakkimaru wounded and asked what had happened. Muni reassured her that he would survive. As she began tending to his injuries, Dororo noticed scars on her body, triggering a painful memory that caused him to run off. A short while later, Teo found him and asked why he had left. Dororo hesitated, deciding to keep what he saw to himself. When he asked if Teo had ever seen Mio at work, Teo explained that his role was to care for the remaining orphans and revealed that their survival was owed entirely to Mio's selfless sacrifices. At Daigo's village, Tahamaru began demanding to be sent off to the battlefield. But Daigo said he was still just a kid and told him to have his mom teach him how to play with his small sword. "I beg your pardon." As Mina appeared, Tahamaru begged her to play with his sword, but she thought he was a spoiled little brat and ignored everything he said. However, Tahamaru realized she'd been only pretending to care about him ever since he was born and wondered whose sword she was really worried about. He thought she was definitely hiding a secret and hoped to eventually discover it. At the temple, the memory of the incident continued flashing across Hyakkimaru's mind, and as he tried heading to the forest, he fell from his injury. But Mio hurried to give him her support to help him relax. Mio tried to coax Hyakkimaru into speaking, but she discovered he couldn't utter a single word. Instead, she began to sing softly for him. Hidden nearby, Muni observed the scene and noticed that Mio's voice seemed to soothe the dark presence stirring within Hyakkimaru's soul. Troubled by what he saw, Muni warned Dororo that he would remain in the forest to keep watch, sharing his fear that Hyakkimaru's demonic flames might one day consume him, turning him into a monster. That evening, as Mio prepared to leave for work, she told Dororo she had seen him watching her the night before. She explained that what she did was the only way to keep everyone alive. Touched by her honesty and bravery, Dororo forgave her, assuring Mio he could never hate her for sacrificing herself for the orphans. Overwhelmed with emotion, he ran to the temple, grateful for the peace he had found with her. At the temple, Hyakkimaru was carving a wooden replacement for his lost leg. Dororo brought him food, insisting he eat to regain his strength. Watching Hyakkimaru's quiet determination, Dororo confessed his hope that he would never lose himself to the demon inside and admitted that Hyakkimaru was his only true friend. By morning, Hyakkimaru had finished crafting the wooden leg and was practicing with his sword. The orphans gathered around, marveling at his sword arms and showing him an assortment of hidden blades they had scavenged from the battlefield. Meanwhile, Mio left for work again, unaware that a soldier from the Ishikawa clan had spotted her and suspected her of being a spy. That night, while the orphans slept, Dororo noticed Hyakkimaru was gone and guessed he had gone to face the demon in the forest. Hyakkimaru approached the demon's lair and slid into the hole, dodging its claws as the rain began to fall. The beast bit off his leg again, but Hyakkimaru drove his blade into its mouth and leaped high, delivering a killing blow that ended it instantly. As the rain stopped, a distant statue of Daigo cracked and split in two. At the temple, Mio returned to find Take anxiously telling her that Hyakkimaru had gone to fight the demon. She hurried to catch up, but Ishikawa soldiers arrived at the temple, accusing the orphans of being spies. They set the temple ablaze and slaughtered the children without mercy. As Hyakkimaru and Dororo approached the temple, they saw the flames and ran toward the chaos. Dororo, horrified, found the orphans dead. The Ishikawa leader accused Mio of betraying them by entering the enemy's camp, believing she had sold them out. Desperate to save her, Dororo tried to run, but the leader caught him and threw him to the ground. Just as the man raised his weapon, Hyakkimaru appeared and severed his hand. The soldiers surrounded Hyakkimaru, but his rage consumed him. Realizing Mio's fate, Hyakkimaru flew into a frenzy, slaughtering soldier after soldier in blind revenge. Dororo, remembering Muni's warning, feared his friend was losing himself to the darkness. Desperately, he stopped Hyakkimaru before he could kill the leader, allowing the man to escape. Among the ashes, Dororo found a small pouch of seed rice. He explained it was Mio's dream to create a rice field for the children so they could eat proper meals after enduring years of burnt rice paddies. He urged Hyakkimaru to honor Mio's dream and never forget her sacrifices. Hearing this, Hyakkimaru spoke his first word, Mio. They buried the bodies of their fallen friends before leaving the temple behind. As they resumed their journey, the memory of Mio's gentle voice singing echoed in their hearts, urging them to keep moving forward through their sorrowful lives. When it was night, Dororo tried asking if Hyakkimaru was hungry, but he only held on to the pouch. Before long, Dororo began hearing voices in the forest and thought two lovebirds were probably plotting behind the bushes. As he grew angry at the thought, he began hurling stones at the trees, but a basket nearly crushed him. Just then, he noticed a spider before him, and Hyakkimaru rushed up the tree immediately. In an instant, he slashed the webs, and a man fell to the ground. But Dororo realized that he had probably lost his mind. As Hyakkimaru flew with the monster, he slashed it instantly, but it cast a web and bound him to a tree before escaping immediately. Later that night, as they spotted a nearby village, Dororo suggested they rest there for the night, and the monster agreed it would be the best place for her to recover. Upon reaching the village, they were stopped by guards who informed them that entry required a pass and warned them about a kidnapper targeting villagers. By morning, a villager noticed the frail woman lying by the roadside. Concerned for her, he approached, but she recoiled, feigning fear. Seeing she was ill, he offered to take her to his home and give her some food. She saw this as an opportunity to drain his life force, imagining she could leave him as empty as a discarded shell. At his home, the man introduced himself as Yujiro and asked for her name. When she said she didn't have one, he decided to call her Ohagi. Seeing her apparent hunger, he served her a bowl of rice. To her surprise, she found the meal delicious and hesitated for a moment, lost in its simple warmth. As he wondered where she was from, she told him to mind his fucking business and said that she would leave his hellhole once she regains her full strength. Just then, he began to leave, saying he would return when it was dark, and she thought he was a mysterious man. Late that evening, Yujiro returned home to find Ohagi's condition worsening. Concerned, he asked if she had eaten all day. Spotting a cockroach nearby, he gently picked it up and released it outside. Curious, Ohagi questioned why he spared the insect, something most humans wouldn't do. Yujiro explained that every life holds value, a sentiment that left her impressed. She admitted she had never met anyone like him. As night fell, Ohagi crawled toward Yujiro while he slept, intending to drain his energy. However, she found herself craving food instead and returned to finish her meal. She reflected on how unique Yujiro was and wished to understand him better. By morning, Dororo, exhausted from his search, lamented that the mysterious spider demon was nowhere to be found. Later that day, the disappearance of another villager baffled him, especially since there were no visible signs of a monster. That night, Yujiro noticed Ohagi's condition had deteriorated further. He informed her that their village lacked doctors and explained that leaving without a pass would be impossible. Determined to help, he offered to sneak her out through a secret exit. Meanwhile, Hyakkimaru and Dororo were chewing on weeds for dinner, with Dororo complaining that starvation awaited if they lingered in the village. As Yujiro and Ohagi approached the hidden path, they encountered Hyakkimaru and Dororo. Recognizing the duo, Ohagi grew tense, suspecting they were there to kill her. Dororo quickly deduced her true identity and ordered Hyakkimaru to attack. Yujiro, however, stepped forward to shield her, confessing that he was the supposed kidnapper. Before the situation escalated, the village guards arrived, accusing Yujiro of aiding in smuggling villagers out. When Dororo tried to claim a reward for capturing him, the guards revealed the reward was a ruse to elicit confessions. As the guards moved to detain them all, Ohagi unleashed her webs, binding and draining the guards' life force instantly. Sensing her demonic aura intensifying, Hyakkimaru drew his sword to strike, but Ohagi ensnared him in her web and fled with Yujiro. After Dororo freed Hyakkimaru, the two pursued the fleeing pair. As they climbed toward the mountain summit, Ohagi cast a web to propel them upward. Seeing her newfound strength, Yujiro admitted he thought she no longer needed him. To his surprise, Ohagi assured him she wanted him by her side forever. When Yujiro asked if she killed those whose energy she drained, Ohagi confessed that while she sapped their life force, she always spared them. Yujiro, moved by her honesty, offered himself willingly, saying he was tired of his lonely life. The two reached a hidden cave where Yujiro urged Ohagi to escape alone, fearing for her safety. Ohagi, however, insisted they leave together, arguing that his identity was already exposed and he would never be safe in the village. Their plan was interrupted by soldiers' arrows piercing Yujiro. Enraged, Ohagi neutralized the arrows with her web and drained the soldier's life force. Transformed into her spider form, she captured the remaining attackers but was intercepted by Hyakkimaru, who severed her web and sliced one of her legs. Despite her injuries, Ohagi refused to abandon Yujiro. When Hyakkimaru prepared to strike again, Yujiro pleaded for her life, declaring his desire to stay with her. Touched by his devotion, Hyakkimaru relented and allowed them to go. The next day, as Hyakkimaru and Dororo resumed their journey, Dororo noticed a faint smile on Hyakkimaru's face. A few days later, Dororo grew curious about why Hyakkimaru, now able to speak, still remained silent. As they walked, they saw a group of strange men carrying a somber-looking girl up a mountain. Assuming it was a bridal procession, Dororo found it odd that the bride seemed unhappy. Suddenly, a boy slid down the mountainside, attempting to stop the group, but the wind thwarted his arrow before he could fire again. Dororo stopped him, saying that he would not allow him to eliminate the beautiful bride. However, the boy thought he was a clueless jerk and told him that the girl was his sister but was being married off to a monster. As he tried leaving, Dororo offered to support him, saying that Hyakkimaru could defeat any monster. Before long, they arrived at the top of the mountain, and Saru revealed a dark, mysterious cloud over their village. He said that the monster was called the Nakasero and that it appeared almost every day to devour their villagers. So to save their own skin, they began offering a girl to the demon and managed to keep the village safe. However, Dororo thought it made no sense and wondered why girls were specifically being offered to the monster, but even Saru had no idea, thinking he could scam the fuck out of this loser. Dororo offered to rescue her but said that it wouldn't be for free, so Saru decided to pay him with worms and a tiny piece of gold. As Dororo realized he could probably sell it, Saru offered to give him more of it if they succeeded, so he agreed to help him, and Saru introduced himself. As the villagers returned, Dororo and Saru ambushed the guards, knocking them unconscious. Saru rushed to free Genie, but she hesitated, confessing her fear that if she left, the demon would destroy the entire village in her place. Saru pleaded with her to save herself, but she insisted that her life was insignificant compared to the lives of everyone else. Dororo, unwilling to accept her sacrifice, declared that they would defeat the monster. Hyakkimaru silently unsheathed his sword, signaling his readiness. Suddenly, a dark cloud began to form, climbing toward them. The guards trembled in fear, only to be dragged into the swirling mass and spat out as lifeless, mangled bodies. A deafening roar echoed as the monstrous centipede emerged, lunging toward Saru. Genie shoved him aside and was swallowed in his stead. Dororo stood frozen in shock, doubting their chances against such a formidable foe. The centipede returned, and Dororo shouted to alert Hyakkimaru, but the swordsman's vision was shrouded by flames of malevolence. Just then, a geyser erupted, spewing boiling water and momentarily illuminating the area. The light drove the demon away, and the dark clouds dissipated. Saru, devastated by his sister's loss, returned to his mountain home, with Dororo following to comfort him. Learning that Saru lived alone, Dororo vowed to help him avenge Genie. He admitted that Hyakkimaru might not be much help in this fight, as the demon's fiery aura obscured his vision. Suddenly, they noticed the cloud expanding, with ash-like flakes falling from the sky. Realizing it was the centipede's shedding skin, they understood the creature was growing even larger. Saru despaired at the thought of defeating it, but Dororo revealed that sunlight was its weakness. The next morning, Dororo disguised himself as a bride to lure out the monster. Once the centipede appeared, he sprinted away, skillfully dodging its attacks and diving into a hole for cover. He re-emerged to maintain its attention, leading it on a chaotic chase. Meanwhile, Saru waited on the mountain, his bow ready. When the monster came into range, he fired a flaming arrow at the geyser, triggering a powerful explosion that engulfed the centipede in flames. As the sun began to rise, the demon extinguished the flames with a burst of fumes, cloaking the area in smoke. It ascended into the air, preparing to strike again. Seizing the moment, Hyakkimaru hurled a rock to distract the beast, then loosed a series of arrows before charging forward to slash its face. The centipede crashed to the ground but remained alive, retaliating fiercely. Hyakkimaru narrowly avoided its thrashing tentacles but was knocked aside by its immense strength. Dororo, realizing he could guide Hyakkimaru, climbed atop the centipede and shouted to direct him. As the monster barreled through a rock, a stray stone struck Dororo, rendering him unconscious. Desperate to protect his friend, Hyakkimaru roared to draw the demon's attention, enduring its relentless attacks. The centipede flung Hyakkimaru high into the air, but Dororo's faint voice gave him a target. Guided by sound, Hyakkimaru plunged his blade into the demon's eye, forcing it to emerge from the clouds. As sunlight struck the centipede, its skin began to burn and peel. With one final leap, Hyakkimaru dove into the monster's mouth and tore it apart from within. The demon disintegrated, its dark presence vanishing with the morning light. Exhausted but triumphant, Dororo celebrated their survival as they both tumbled into a nearby river. A short while later, Saru spotted Genie floating in the water, miraculously alive. Overjoyed, he embraced his sister, grateful for their reunion and the hope of a brighter future. Right then, Hyakkimaru began to groan, and his fake nose fell into the water, allowing a real nose to grow in its place. A few minutes later, as Saru gave Dororo the remaining gold he promised, he realized that it was a rotten piece of food and wondered how they would survive on this. But Genie decided to thank him with a flower. As they began leaving the mountain, Hyakkimaru smelled the flower and said, "Dororo's name," for the first time. When he heard that, Dororo realized Hyakkimaru was starting to regain his full humanity. Later that day, as Hyakkimaru sniffed a flower, he decided to smell Dororo's face, but he pushed him away and fell from exhaustion. As he tried to stand, he fell again, and Hyakkimaru realized that something was definitely wrong with him. So he carried him to a nearby village and tried asking for help from a farmer, but the man ignored him. As he met another man, he tried telling him that Hyakkimaru was really sick, but the man told him that he's not a doctor and decided to leave. Having nowhere else to go, Hyakkimaru left him on the ground, and Dororo remembered that this was exactly how his mother died. Luckily, a woman found them and decided to take them home. As Dororo regained consciousness, he thought Hyakkimaru must have abandoned him and tried to leave, but she managed to calm him down. Just then, she realized that Dororo was actually a girl, but as she noticed the Minagi flower, Dororo revealed that it reminds her of her parents, and this made her sad. Years ago, her father was the leader of a group of warriors who fought to eliminate the samurai for destroying their village during the war, but was led to a trap by her evil uncle to kill all of them. With all his men dead, one of the soldiers stabbed her father from the back, but he took him with him to the afterlife, and they watched as the village burned before them. After the devastating loss of her father, Dororo's mother took sole responsibility for her care. Together, they wandered for weeks with no food, their journey marked by desperation and hunger. One fateful day, her mother collapsed in a field of Minagi flowers, urging Dororo to stay strong and survive until the war ended. Inspired by her mother's final words, Dororo vowed to persevere, determined never to give up. Later, a woman who had crossed paths with Dororo marveled at how the child had endured such hardship without proper nourishment. In a quiet moment with Hyakkimaru, she revealed a surprising truth. Dororo was actually a girl. A few days passed, and as they prepared to leave the village, Dororo wondered aloud if Hyakkimaru had figured out her secret. He gave no response, simply continuing on their path. Back at Daigo's village, a messenger delivered unsettling news. He informed Daigo that the baby he had abandoned years ago might still be alive. A commander from their forces had been attacked by a mysterious man with prosthetic arms, raising suspicions. Troubled by this revelation, Daigo speculated whether his son could have survived after all. Later that day, a chief reported that a relentless drought had parched their lands, threatening to destroy the rice fields. Another chief then warned of an impending attack by a rival clan preparing for war. Facing multiple crises, Daigo rode to his temple, consumed by the belief that the breaking of the demon statues and Hyakkimaru's reclamation of his body parts were connected. As a mystical smoke revealed a vision of Hyakkimaru, Daigo's suspicions were confirmed. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Hyakkimaru confronted a monstrous foe, dispatching it swiftly with his blade. While Dororo washed the blood from his clothes, she suggested they head to the nearby village in search of food. Her eyes caught sight of a pouch Hyakkimaru carried, and she questioned if it bore his family crest. He stared at it in silence, offering no explanation. Back at Daigo's village, Tahamaru sought answers from the messenger about the abandoned baby. The man reluctantly disclosed that the child had vanished years ago. When Tahamaru pressed further, asking why the baby was so important, the messenger bit off his own tongue to keep the secret safe. This horrifying act confirmed Tahamaru's fears. The truth was darker than he had imagined. So that evening, he decided to confront his father, demanding to know why he's been asking for a baby. However, Daigo screamed at him to fuck off and told him to stick his ugly nose into his own business. The following day, as his men found him on the island shore, Tahamaru began telling them that his father probably thought he was still a kid and said that he must prove himself to everyone. At that moment, he noticed several villagers on the shore and decided to ask if they were under attack. One of the villagers told him that they were being eaten up by a monster inside the lake and said that they would never be safe with the monster alive. Tahamaru realized that this was his perfect opportunity to prove himself, so he told them that he would annihilate the monster, and his men followed him for support. That evening, as the villagers rowed their boats toward the lake's center, one of the fishermen noticed the oar was stuck, halting their progress. Suddenly, Tahamaru sensed the presence of the monster. Within moments, the massive beast emerged from the water, its towering form striking terror into the hearts of the villagers, who feared they'd become its meal. Acting swiftly, they tied their boats together with ropes, anchoring the creature in place as it thrashed in anger. Tahamaru drew his sword, leaping onto another boat to position himself for an attack. The monster lunged, snapping its claws at a nearby villager, who narrowly escaped. Matsu responded quickly, firing an arrow that struck the beast. Tahamaru jumped to another vessel and, with a powerful swing, severed one of the creature's claws. Hyogo followed up with a crushing blow, cracking its shell. Tahamaru aimed for a killing strike, but the beast retreated into the water, disappearing from sight. Moments later, it began ramming the boats, attempting to sink them. Realizing the danger, Tahamaru ordered the villagers to pull their boats toward the island's shore. Matsu cautioned that they stood little chance of defeating the monster while it remained submerged, suggesting they rethink their strategy. Later that evening, Tahamaru proposed a plan to throw explosives into the monster's mouth, confident it would obliterate the creature. But he hesitated, unwilling to risk the lives of his men. As he scanned the horizon, he noticed something in the distance. With Hyogo lifting him higher, Tahamaru spotted a solution that sparked a brilliant idea. The next day, the villagers worked tirelessly, cutting wood and digging a new channel around the island. They constructed a wooden gate to redirect the lake's water. Once ready, they used a decoy boat to lure the monster out. At Tahamaru's signal, the villagers severed the ropes, releasing the gate. The water drained into the newly dug path, leaving the beast stranded and vulnerable. As the exposed monster roared in defiance, Tahamaru led the charge with his men. They dodged its massive claws while Tahamaru slashed one of its legs. Hyogo severed another, and Matsu's arrows struck the creature's head, weakening it further. Encouraged by the progress, the villagers cheered as Tahamaru landed a deep cut into its body. They began pelting the beast with stones, but it retaliated, hurling a massive rock that struck the gate. Realizing their advantage was slipping, Tahamaru redirected the men to defend the gate. However, another rock smashed through, causing water to flood back into the area. Refusing to back down, Tahamaru planted his sword in the ground and rallied his men. The surging water swept villagers off their feet, but Hyogo managed to rescue them, throwing them onto the island to safety. As the monster closed in on Tahamaru, ready to strike, Hyakamaru appeared out of nowhere, his blade flashing in the sunlight. In one swift motion, he dispatched the beast, slicing it apart. Tahamaru stood stunned, unsure if he or Hyakamaru had delivered the final blow. His men quickly pulled him onto their boat, and as they paddled away, Tahamaru caught a glimpse of Hyakamaru standing on the shore. His thoughts churned as he wondered just how powerful this mysterious warrior was to defeat such a fearsome creature. Later on the island, Tahamaru demanded to know who Hyakamaru was, but Dororo told him to be grateful that they managed to save their asses. So he thanked him but wondered why Hyakamaru was only staring at him. Dororo told him that he was blind and said that he could only see with his soul. But she demanded their broke asses pay up for saving them, so Tahamaru gave her some silver coins. As Dororo wondered how they could find the nearby village they've been looking for, Tahamaru pointed towards his village. However, as they began heading towards the village, Hyakamaru remembered his soul and wondered if he had ever met him before. Inside the village, a seer shrieked in terror at the sight of Dororo and Hyakamaru, declaring that the demon child had come to destroy them all before fleeing in panic. Meanwhile, Dororo observed the peacefulness of the village, noticing how content and happy everyone seemed. As he scanned the crowd, he spotted Mooney and wondered how he had managed to find this place. A short time later, while resting by a stream, Mooney explained that the statues of demons were inside Daigo's temple. He also noted that Hyakamaru's soul was tainted by demonic presence. Realizing that he had been killing humans, Mooney warned Dororo to be cautious, as the demon within Hyakamaru might completely take over him. At Daigo's palace, Mutsu informed Daigo that they had been saved by a mysterious traveler who had been slaying demons across the villages. When the traveler revealed his name, Daigo was struck with shock, realizing that the man was actually his long-lost son. Overwhelmed by the revelation, Daigo struggled with his emotions. Meanwhile, Dororo and Hyakamaru began to leave the village, eager to find the monster terrorizing the locals. As they approached a towering wall, Hyakamaru sensed a powerful demon nearby. Just then, a boy appeared before them, startling Dororo. The boy warned them that they would be killed if they tried to cross the wall. He explained that the Isakura soldiers from a neighboring clan at war with the Ishikawa clan would shoot them on sight. Despite this, Dororo remained resolute, insisting that they had come to slay Bandman, the fearsome monster haunting the area. Later that evening, as Sukeroku, the boy, prepared soup, he shared his story. The land beyond the wall used to be his home, but after the wall was built, he had been forbidden to return. The territory now belonged to the Isakura clan, but Sukeroku was determined to reunite with his family. Dororo offered to help him sneak across at night, but Sukeroku warned that demons always roamed the area, ready to devour anyone who crossed their path. Dororo, undeterred, assured him that she could handle any demon they encountered. Back at Daigo's palace, Mina questioned Daigo's intentions, fearful that he planned to kill Hyakamaru to protect his insignificant village. She reminded him that he was being punished for sacrificing his son years ago, but Daigo dismissed her concerns, deciding to leave regardless. That night, as the Isakura soldiers left their post, the group heard strange noises. Suddenly, a flaming demon descended from the sky. Sukeroku identified it as the Bandman, the creature terrorizing the area. Moments later, more flaming figures appeared, transforming into foxes. As one demon lunged at Hyakamaru, he swiftly slashed it, taking down several others in quick succession. However, the lead fox demon summoned more spirits, and soon the sky was filled with flying apparitions. Despite his efforts, a demon managed to strike Hyakamaru, bruising his face. Dororo, from the sidelines, started throwing rocks, causing the demons to vanish, giving Hyakamaru a chance to slay more of them. Seizing the moment, Sukeroku began running toward the other side of the wall, but Dororo tried to stop him, fearing the danger. As she chased after him, a demon almost caught her, but Hyakamaru intervened, killing it before it could harm her. Dororo continued her pursuit, but the demons merged into a powerful 10-tailed fox. The fox pinned her down and tried to devour her. In a desperate struggle, Dororo kicked the fox away and slashed at it with her sword. Just as the fox prepared to strike again, a volley of arrows struck it, forcing the demon to retreat into the village. The battle was far from over, but Dororo and Hyakamaru had managed to survive another encounter with the relentless demons. Tahamaru began looking for Hyakamaru, thinking he would help him to discover his family's secret, but he noticed the seer as she spotted him. She began to freak out like a useless nutcase, saying that the demon child has returned to slay Daigo. As he demanded to know what she meant, she told him that it was the curse of demons and that the cursed child has returned to curse Daigo and the village. At the same time, Dororo was screaming for Sukeroku in the forest but soon realized that he has been captured by the soldiers at the wall. Hyakamaru realized that an army was before him and sensed the power of the demons inside Daigo's soul. As he asked who he was, one of the men began calling him a useless moron for speaking directly to Daigo. In an instant, Hyakamaru knocked their torches and flashed to feel Daigo's soul. As Daigo realized that he was truly his cursed son, he tried to strike him, but he jumped away immediately. As he wondered how he managed to survive on his own, he called him a half-born demon child and commanded his men to eliminate him. So they launched arrows immediately, but he escaped to the other side, and the men pursued him inside the forest. As he hid on a tree, he wondered what Daigo's words meant and realized he must see him again. Dororo awoke in a cell, realizing she was now a captive of the Isakura clan. She spotted Sukeroku and asked if he had found his village, but he sadly explained that it had been destroyed, and his family was likely dead. Trying to lift his spirits, Dororo suggested they could travel the world together. A fellow prisoner interrupted, saying they would be safer escaping to Daigo's territory, where the goddess of mercy protected the land, and the demon kept the Isakura clan from crossing the Banman Wall. Dororo noticed the man's crest, which matched the symbol on Hyakamaru's pouch. The man revealed it was Daigo's clan crest. Seeing an opening in the cell, Dororo thought it might lead to freedom. She urged Sukeroku to escape with her, but he was too afraid. The other prisoner believed escape was impossible. Determined, Dororo promised to return for Sukeroku and began climbing the rocks. As she neared the top, a guard spotted her and called for backup. One guard aimed an arrow at her, but Sukeroku intervened, causing the shot to miss. Yelling for Dororo to escape, she managed to slip past and fall into a stream, free but determined to return for her friend. Meanwhile, at Daigo's palace, Tahamaru arrived home and demanded to know why Mina and his father fed Hyakamaru to the demons. But the memory of it broke her heart as Tahamaru said that she was useless for abandoning her own son. Daigo appeared at that moment, saying that it was the only way to save their village from the wars and famine that destroyed his people. Just then, they were warned about an intruder and discovered that he was Hyakamaru. As he noticed their souls, he realized they were probably his family and managed to block the soldiers' arrows. However, as they launched new arrows, he began running away, and Daigo commanded his men to kill him. Hearing his words, Tahamaru tried saying that Hyakamaru should be spared, seeing as he was his brother. But Daigo told him to get his empty brains out of his ass and said that Hyakamaru's survival would destroy their entire village. In the forest, Dororo emerged from the bushes, and Hyakamaru noticed her. She informed him that Sukeroku was about to be executed. Meanwhile, an Isakura soldier announced to the prisoners that they had declared war on the Ishikawa clan, believing the demon guarding their land had been vanquished. The execution would be their formal declaration of war. In the village, Tahamaru and his men arrived at the temple, where they saw the broken statues, realizing the seal with the demons would soon be shattered. A powerful wind began to blow, eventually forcing them outside. This prompted Tahamaru to reconsider his stance, understanding that the survival of his village took precedence, even if it meant siding with the demons. As Dororo and Hyakamaru continued their journey through the forest, Dororo learned that Hyakamaru's family had once ruled the village. She joked that they would be treated like royalty when they reached the palace, and Hyakamaru expressed a hope to see his mother again. Meanwhile, at the Banman Wall, Isakura soldiers fired arrows at the prisoners, but Sukeroku managed to survive. The Ishikawa soldiers launched their assault, and Dororo watched from the forest. Suddenly, spirit flames appeared, and Hyakamaru rushed into battle, slashing at the flames. On the battlefield, a demon consumed a soldier, and the Isakura forces fled, realizing they couldn't win the war. As Hyakamaru was spotted by the Ishikawa soldiers, he declared himself the demon threatening their village. Upon seeing a soldier who had killed Mio and the orphans, Hyakamaru became enraged, ready to destroy them. Dororo intervened, managing to calm him down. At that moment, Tahamaru arrived and revealed that he was Hyakamaru's younger brother. He explained that their father had offered Hyakamaru as a sacrifice for the village. Tahamaru believed it was the right thing to do, warning that breaking the seal with the demons would doom the village. He declared that Hyakamaru, now a demon in their land, must be killed. Tahamaru drew his sword, ready to fight. Dororo, horrified, rushed to help Sukeroku escape. As the brothers clashed, Dororo tried to free Sukeroku, but the spirit foxes began to return. The foxes merged into a 10-tailed demon fox, and Sukeroku urged Dororo to flee. Desperate, Dororo called for Hyakamaru's help. Without hesitation, Hyakamaru slashed at Tahamaru, wounding him before charging at the demon fox. He slashed it relentlessly, destroying it with a final blow that sent it crashing into the wall. Mina arrived, revealing the broken statue of the goddess of mercy. She asked for Hyakamaru's forgiveness, explaining that she couldn't save him and that the village's survival depended on his sacrificed body parts. In an act of selflessness, she offered herself as a replacement. As she spoke, a radiant light appeared on the wall, and the structure began to crumble. The group hurriedly fled the scene. Later, as they stood by the crash site, Dororo wondered where they should go next. Sukeroku, however, spotted his family on the mountains, alive and well. Relieved, he reunited with them, and the group decided it was time to leave the village behind. Weeks passed, and Hyakamaru, haunted by memories of his mother, couldn't sleep. Dororo asked him what troubled him, and he confessed that he intended to kill every demon in the world. Determined to continue his quest, he began to walk away. Dororo tried to stop him, urging him to rest, but he brushed past her, resolute in his mission. A few days later, as they crossed a bridge towards another village, Dororo told Hyakkimaru that there's a hot spring nearby and suggested that they soak in it. However, when she realized that Hyakkimaru was only determined to hunt for monsters, she screamed that a monster was spotted close to the spring, successfully bringing him to a halt. Meanwhile, in Daigo's village, it had begun to rain again, and Daigo was relieved that the war was cancelled, but Mina was yet to regain consciousness. However, with the rain having returned, he thought it was a sign that the demons had not broken their seal, but wondered how much longer they would continue to back him up, seeing as Hyakkimaru would not stop until they were all dead. As they relaxed in the water, Dororo and Hyakkimaru soon noticed that Muni had joined them. He remarked that it seemed they were destined to meet wherever they went. The next morning, Dororo discovered a map carved into her back. Muni explained that the map likely became visible only when her body was warmed. This reminded Dororo of her mother, who had shown her half of the map and explained that it would lead to her father's treasure. Her mother had told her that she would understand how to find it once she found someone she trusted. But Dororo had never fully grasped her words and had forgotten about the treasure. Muni then asked what Dororo planned to do once Hyakkimaru regained all his body parts. He believed the treasure could help her create a new life, even a kingdom of her own. However, he doubted that Hyakkimaru would support such an idea and questioned whether fully reclaiming his body would truly bring him happiness. Later that day, as they arrived at the forest, they noticed an ugly ghost, and Dororo hid herself away. However, Hyakkimaru thought they weren't demons, and one of the ghosts vanished before their eyes. At that moment, the huge ghost began approaching Dororo, asking for a motherly hug, but the girl was terrified at the sight of it, and it fell on top of her, nearly crushing her. As she tried screaming for Hyakkimaru's help, he merely ignored her, saying that it was not a demon. So the ghost began following them, holding Dororo like its own baby, and before long, they arrived at a ruined temple. So the ugly ghost directed Hyakkimaru to a spot. As he checked the sand, he discovered it was oil, and Dororo said that the oil was probably burned down. At that moment, the big ghost held Dororo once again, calling her mother, but the poor girl was only desperate to go far away from it. Just then, it vanished, and a strange man appeared before them. He told them that the forest was haunted at night and said that it was very dangerous for travelers. As he paid his last respects to the dead, he invited them to his home for dinner, saying that he has no desire to see them become ghost meat. However, Dororo thought his eyes were creepy and hid herself away. As the man introduced himself as Sabin, saying that he was the lord of the land, Hyakkimaru noticed a demon aura around his soul, but they decided to follow him anyway. When they arrived at Sabin's home, nestled deep within the forest, Dororo and Hyakkimaru were greeted by a group of dancers who performed a lively welcome. Dororo, famished from their journey, devoured the food before her as if she hadn't eaten in days. She thought to herself that Sabin must be a kind man to offer them such an abundance of food. Sabin, noticing her hunger, explained that he welcomed every traveler who passed through his land. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Dororo asked him about the fire that had destroyed the temple. However, at that moment, the dancers ceased and withdrew, an unusual silence settling over the room. Sensing something was off, Dororo watched as Sabin began to speak. Sabin told them that many years ago, a nun had been in charge of the temple, caring for orphans. Yet over time, she grew cruel, forcing the children to labor on farms and eventually selling them off to distant villages. One day, lightning struck the temple, setting it ablaze, and everyone perished inside. When Hyakkimaru asked about the ghostly figure haunting the forest, Sabin revealed that it was the nun's spirit, forever barred from heaven because of her sins. She now wandered the woods, seeking new travelers to devour. That night, as they prepared to rest, Dororo questioned the truth of Sabin's tale. Hyakkimaru, however, was skeptical, thinking it might not be true. Dororo pointed out that the spilled oil on the sand suggested the temple had been deliberately set on fire, and she feared a demon might attack them to keep the secret from being uncovered. As they slept, a monster appeared on the wooden floor, and Dororo, realizing they were in danger, tried to rouse Hyakkimaru, only to find him deeply asleep. The creature lunged at them, but Hyakkimaru swiftly severed its arms, causing it to collapse to the floor. As he attempted to finish it off, The beast spat silk at him, binding his arms. However, Hyakkimaru broke free and dealt the finishing blow before the creature could escape. Desperate to survive, the monster spat another strand of silk, but Hyakkimaru fought through it, stabbing the creature deep in the belly. Just when they thought it was dead, the beast screamed, and the doors were blown open. A new, more powerful monster emerged before them. Hyakkimaru quickly recognized it as a demon, but before it could attack, the demon cast a strange dust that seemed to calm the situation. The dust put Dororo and Hyakkimaru at ease, and the demon carried away the fallen creature, restoring peace. Though Dororo noticed the dust wasn't harmful, Hyakkimaru advised her to wash it off, just in case. Outside the village, the demon, now in the form of a woman, spoke with Sabin. She explained that they couldn't devour the travelers because one of them was the cursed child, destined to reclaim his body parts. She warned Sabin that Hyakkimaru would eventually come for them. Sabin, however, promised to protect her and the other monsters. The next morning, as they had breakfast, Sabin suggested that Dororo and Hyakkimaru stay longer in the village, assuring them that they would be safe there. Dororo, exploring the village, soon noticed that everyone seemed unusually happy. A family invited her into their home, and a child offered her a rice cake. An elderly woman explained that they owed their lives to Sabin. Dororo tried to ask about the true events at the temple, but the woman quickly excused herself. Dororo felt uneasy as she noticed the villagers staring at her with strange, unblinking eyes. Meanwhile, Hyakkimaru followed Sabin into the forest, trailing him until they reached an open space with a view of the village. Sabin casually explained that he came there often to admire the view. Hyakkimaru, however, realized that Sabin had led him to this spot intentionally, perhaps to learn more about him. Dororo, still suspicious, discovered a storehouse a little outside of the village. She wondered why it was located so far from the rest of the village and why the villagers seemed so strange. Inside, she found it filled with rice, which seemed to indicate the villagers were hardworking. Yet, as she was about to leave, she tripped over a floorboard. Upon closer inspection, she realized the storehouse hid a trapdoor. Curiosity getting the best of her, she opened it, only for a villager to appear and kick her inside. The villager called her too nosy and claimed she deserved to be devoured. She was thrown into the trap to keep the village's secret safe. Meanwhile, Sabin spoke to Hyakkimaru, telling him that this village was his home and that he would protect it from any threat. He explained that even the demons were his people, and he would defend them until the end of his days. Sabin then shared the history of the village. Years ago, it had been ravaged by a group of samurai fleeing from war, leaving the land desolate. It was then that a powerful demon appeared and offered to protect the village in exchange for regular meals. Sabin accepted, and the demons began feeding on the samurai, restoring peace to the area. Sabin then asked Hyakkimaru what his true purpose was. Hyakkimaru's answer was simple. He wanted to reclaim every one of his lost body parts. Trapped in the underground, Dororo screamed for help but quickly realized her chances of being found were slim. Desperate, she wondered how she could communicate with Hyakkimaru about her situation. As she panicked, several monsters appeared from the shadows, forcing her to run for her life. Just as one of them caught her ankle with silk, she stumbled and fell onto the sand. Struggling to get up, she noticed bones scattered around her. In that moment, a large ghost appeared, halting the monsters in their tracks. The ghost ordered the creatures to withdraw, but they ignored it, intent on devouring her. Suddenly, baby ghosts emerged, chasing the monsters away. One of the little ghosts returned and shared the truth with Dororo. Sabin had killed the nun and fed the orphans to the monsters. Dororo was heartbroken by the revelation and questioned how the villagers could be so cruel. The baby ghosts offered to guide her out of the underground. Meanwhile, in the forest, the beast awakened, and Sabin declared that Hyakkimaru would become its next meal. As the demons released strange dust, Hyakkimaru held his breath, realizing that Sabin, like Daigo, would sacrifice anyone for his own benefit. He fought back, slashing at the monsters and knocking one to the ground, tearing the wing off another. Sabin tried to check on the beast, but Hyakkimaru kicked him aside, sending him tumbling down the hill. Hyakkimaru then stabbed the demon, but it managed to fly away, injuring him with its claws. The beast grew furious, crashing into a tower and setting it on fire, quickly spreading flames throughout the village. That evening, Dororo found Hyakkimaru in the forest, and he finally revealed the full truth. They both realized the village was burning, and the villagers watched helplessly as their storehouse went up in flames. Without their food, they began to fight over the remaining rice, desperate to survive. Sabin, witnessing the destruction, understood that everything they had worked for was lost. As Hyakkimaru prepared to leave, his prosthetic leg shattered, but he refused to stay. He decided to hunt down the last of the demons. At the center of a lake, a monster emerged and carried him away, but Hyakkimaru shot flames at its wings, instantly burning it before falling into the water. As he crawled back onto the shore, a statue broke, and pieces of wood fell from his back, revealing that a real spinal cord had grown in its place. As dawn arrived, Dororo noticed the aftermath of the village's destruction. The villagers were left in despair, and she questioned whether their actions had been right. She wondered if killing the demons would have any meaningful impact on the world. But Hyakkimaru remained focused on his mission, caring only about slaying the next demon. As Dororo looked around, she realized that she had been left behind. Hyakkimaru had become more consumed by his quest, and she knew he would never acknowledge her feelings. With a heavy heart, she chose a different path, determined to find her own way. Just then, a group of mercenaries arrived, and she discovered that their leader was Itachi, the uncle that lured her village into their death. He told her that he's been looking for her and demanded the other half of her father's map. As she wondered how he managed to discover it in the first place, he told her that he was spying on her father when he was alive and commanded his men to glance at her back. However, before they got close, she decided to reveal it, and they realized that there was no drawing on her. Even so, Itachi wasn't buying this and said that she has probably memorized it or something, so he ordered his men to capture her. Before long, they started riding away, and Dororo was tied to the horse as they rode through the forest all day. Dororo wondered where they were heading to, so Itachi told her that he was going in search of her father's treasure and revealed that he noticed him sneaking through the camp a few years ago. At the time, he suspected that he was probably hiding half of their loot for himself and even tried spying on him, but he never discovered anything and eventually gave up. However, he was now desperate for money and decided to look for the treasure once again. After all, he had nothing more to lose. Luckily, he came across her mother's burial site and managed to discover the map after digging her up. Hearing these words, Dororo grew angry and tried charging at him, but she fell after being restrained by the rope. The next day, they continued their journey up the mountain and soon reached a cliff. Itachi spotted an island ahead and was certain it marked the treasure's location. He decided to cut Dororo loose, offering her half of the treasure if she helped him find it. But Dororo wasn't fooled. His face was as untrustworthy as his words. Realizing they needed a boat to reach the island, they made their way to a nearby village, only to find it in ruins, likely destroyed by bandits. They reached the shore and saw that the boats had been damaged. At that moment, a strange man appeared, offering them a ride on his boat. Although Itachi found him creepy, they had little choice. The man, Azura, explained that the villagers had been killed by bandits. Dororo was skeptical, suspecting he was lying, and urged Itachi to find another way. But Itachi insisted this was their only option. Once on the boat, two sharks emerged from the water, pulling them toward the island. The men were terrified, but Azura calmly explained that the sharks were his family. Itachi thought he was out of his mind, but Dororo, curious, asked how he lost his arm. Azura revealed that he had fed it to the sharks when they were hungry, and eventually he had fed them every villager. It was then that Itachi realized they were headed to the wrong island and threatened to kill Azura. In response, Azura commanded the sharks to attack. One shark dragged a boat under the water, and the creatures began tearing into the men like a feast. As Itachi tried to confront Azura, a shark scratched his arm, giving the weirdo the chance to escape unscathed. He ordered the sharks to leave the remaining men for later and began heading toward the shore. A few hours later, as one of the men tried paddling away, a shark emerged and devoured the wood, making the men realize they were entirely hopeless. However, Dororo would not give up and began telling them to wake the fuck up because no one would remember their worthless lives if they died here. When the men began to wonder how they would escape, Dororo offered to lure the shark to the surface so that they would kill it immediately. Before they knew it, she jumped into the water and swam deep inside. As she narrowly dodged the shark, she yanked the rope, so they began pulling her towards the surface. As the shark tried devouring her, she caught its face, successfully luring it out of the water, and the men stabbed it at the same time, killing the shark immediately. Realizing Azura would soon return, Itachi commanded his men to sail towards the island. So at dusk, as Azura arrived, he discovered that his shark had been slain and hurried to the island. Just then, the men appeared before him, having lured him into the trap and soon beat him to a pulp. At dawn, the men began their trek up the hill, continuing the search for the treasure. Dororo couldn't shake the feeling that it might be the end for her. Meanwhile, Azura regained consciousness and commanded his shark to devour all the men. On a distant battlefield, Chibi was busy fitting prosthetics onto bodies, determined to keep the promise he made. As a thief snatched one of the prosthetic eyes, a demon appeared and immediately devoured him, knocking Chibi to the ground in the process. The demon attacked an old man next, but before it could finish, Hyakkimaru suddenly appeared and killed it. Chibi, astonished by Hyakkimaru's power, noticed how much he had changed and wondered how he managed to reclaim his body parts and even learned to speak. As they sat in a cave, Chibi served Hyakkimaru dinner, but he was still preoccupied with the prosthetic leg Hyakkimaru desperately wanted. Hyakkimaru, however, seemed uninterested in anything but getting the new leg. Chibi, reluctant, offered him food and noticed a pouch fall from Hyakkimaru. He asked if Hyakkimaru had met his family. In response, Hyakkimaru revealed that his father had sold him to demons, prompting him to recount the entire story. Back in Daigo's village, Mina finally regained consciousness. When she shared this with the housekeeper, Tahamaru, uninterested, ignored her and left with his men. Meanwhile, in the cave, Chibi learned the truth about Hyakkimaru's past and realized that the survival of Daigo's village depended on him. Hyakkimaru repeated his demand for a new leg, but Chibi, fearing the consequences, refused. He explained that with each demon Hyakkimaru killed, he was losing his humanity. Chibi feared that Hyakkimaru would eventually become a demon himself. He believed providing a new prosthetic would only accelerate this process and, in the end, ruin him. Chibi destroyed the leg in an effort to save him. At that moment, Hyakkimaru recalled his mother's words, which were eerily similar to Chibi's, and the cave entrance was sealed by a landslide. At Daigo's palace, Mina told him that Hyakkimaru survived the demon's sacrifice because the goddess of mercy had offered her head in exchange for his life. She reasoned that this was why Hyakkimaru's head hadn't been consumed by the last demon. With the goddess now destroyed, Mina believed that Daigo's pact with the demons was broken, and the village would soon be in danger. Daigo dismissed her concerns, assuring her the village would remain safe. However, as Daigo stepped outside, a spy reported seeing Dororo on an island, and he concluded that Hyakkimaru was with her. Daigo immediately ordered Tahamaru to find him. Tahamaru and his men arrived at an abandoned house, having learned that a demon was killing villagers. Tahamaru felt it was his duty to confront it. Upon entering, they noticed a rat scurrying across the wood. Before they could react, the rat lunged at them, but Tahamaru quickly cast it aside. They realized it was a demon, and Hyogo attempted to crush it, but the creature nipped him and avoided Matsu's arrows. Tahamaru, undeterred, struck the demon's limb, determined to rid the village of the menace. In the cave, Hyakkimaru began digging a new way out, and as Chibi noticed his determination to slay more demons, he wondered why Hyakkimaru was so eager to resume his hunt for them. So he told him that he must reclaim every part of his body. Just then, he punctured the wall and discovered he could see outside. Meanwhile, in the demon-infested house, Matsu decided to spy on the demon and realized that it had over 1,000 babies, looking to end it. He aimed his arrow at the monsters, but the beast charged at him. So Tahamaru slashed another limb out of nowhere as Hyogo tried to end it. The beast escaped, but Matsu pinned it to the floor. With the demon captured, Tahamaru suggested that they burn down the house, saying that it was the only way to obliterate the monsters for good. So they decided to do so. As Tahamaru began to leave, he told his men that he would protect his village, even from his own brother. In the meantime, Hyakkimaru eventually made his way outside and discovered a bunch of demons before him. Just then, one beast began charging at him, but he slayed the monster and destroyed the rest of them in a moment. At the sight of this, Chibi thought he may have raised a monster and wondered why he rescued him in the first place. Before long, Hyakkimaru had slain all the demons and immediately stabbed the evil core, causing it to dispel, and all the monster seeds began to vanish. By the next day, Hyakkimaru was preparing to leave when he asked Chibi for his name. Chibi, feeling his life was stained by murder, insisted he didn't deserve one. With that, Hyakkimaru turned to leave. Meanwhile, in Daigo's village, Tahamaru had gathered an army to hunt down Hyakkimaru. On the other side, Hyakkimaru had secured a boat and set sail towards the island in search of Dororo. On the island, Itachi and his men were still scouring for the treasure, but doubts began to rise about whether they were heading in the right direction. On the beach, the shark that had been devouring the dead one began to transform into a monstrous creature. Now a giant, it lurched toward Dororo, ready to make her its next meal. As it tried to devour her, it instead bit into a tree, ripping it out of the ground. Dororo managed to dodge but was soon knocked aside as the shark continued its pursuit. Just as the beast lunged to finish her off, Hyakkimaru arrived, slashing at the creature and stopping it in its tracks. Dororo, surprised by his appearance, asked why he had come. Hyakkimaru explained that it was a demon. The shark, still alive, began to stir. Hyakkimaru charged at it, jumping over to the other side, but the beast caught his wooden leg. Undeterred, Hyakkimaru stabbed its eye, but the monster fought back, trying to shake him off. Despite the struggle, Hyakkimaru stabbed again and again, until the shark finally collapsed, dead. With the danger past, Hyakkimaru and Dororo exchanged a brief moment, rubbing heads in mutual appreciation. Dororo thanked him for rescuing her. As they spoke, Hyakkimaru groaned, and Dororo watched as his wooden leg fell away, replaced by a real one. Realizing time was of the essence, Dororo suggested they find Itachi immediately, so the two of them made their way towards the mountain. At the same time, Itachi and his men had reached a cave on the mountain, convinced the treasure was inside. Two of his men eagerly entered, but their excitement was short-lived when one triggered a trap, causing the cave to explode. Despite the setback, Itachi remained confident that he would find the treasure. Meanwhile, Hyakkimaru noticed Theo's ship approaching the island and feared they were coming after him. Before long, the army reached the shore, and Matsu informed Tahamaru that they had found Hyakkimaru's boat. Tahamaru, now certain of Hyakkimaru's location, ordered his men to eliminate him and anyone else in their way. Seeing the army, Itachi realized they were not here for treasure, but to annihilate everyone. In a panic, he fled, abandoning his search for the treasure. Meanwhile, Dororo and Hyakkimaru ran to find a safe spot as two archers took aim at them. Using rocks, they knocked out the archers and kept moving. As Dororo climbed the mountain, she realized Itachi and his men were already hiding there. Itachi, still obsessed with the treasure, admitted he had not yet found her father's riches. So Dororo began screaming at him to wake the fuck up, saying that their survival was more important than any money. But Itachi thought Tahamaru would find it and claim it as his own. As Hyakkimaru suggested they create a distraction, Itachi thought he had the perfect plan. So a few minutes later, one of his men pretended to be a wounded samurai and told the army that Itachi was preparing explosives. Right then, a rock exploded, and the soldiers hurried to the site, utilizing their distraction. Itachi suggested that they hurry to the shore. However, as they began to leave, one of the men was killed with an arrow, and they realized that Matsu was aiming at them from the shore. Before noticing Hyogo on the rock above them, at that moment, Tahamaru began approaching them, saying that Hyakkimaru was the demon terrorizing their land and must be slain immediately. Angered by the sight of him, Hyakkimaru charged forward, but Hyogo landed before him, cracking the ground with his weapon, and the cliff crumbled at that instant. However, Hyakkimaru managed to catch a rock and returned immediately as he locked swords with Tahamaru. Itachi screamed for his men to run and began pulling Dororo away. At the same time, Hyakkimaru dodged Hyogo's weapon and destroyed Matsu's arrows. As he hid behind a tree, he wondered how Tahamaru became so evil and vengeful like his father. So Matsu revealed that killing him was the only way he could protect his land as he fired an arrow that pierced his back. Tahamaru decided to utilize this advantage and attacked again, allowing Hyogo to break his sword. In the meantime, Itachi and his men tried sneaking around the mountain, but arrows pierced his men before they escaped. Before long, they discovered a line of statues, and Itachi revealed that this spot was marked on his map as he started checking the statues. He realized that he could easily become a millionaire when he finds the treasure, but an arrow pierced his back at that instant. Afraid he would be captured, he flung his sword at the army, killing one of the samurai, but they launched more arrows at him. As the fight continued, Dororo managed to hide behind one of the statues, but as it toppled, it knocked down the rest, sending them sliding down the mountain, crushing the men in the process. In the chaos, Hyakkimaru dodged Hyogo's weapon and climbed a tree. Matsu's arrow missed, and Hyakkimaru launched himself toward Tahamaru, sword raised. However, Hyogo knocked him back, pushing him toward a rock. Desperately, Hyogo yelled for Tahamaru to finish him off. Hyakkimaru kicked him away, backing him into a wall, declaring that they were now enemies. The two clashed swords, each blow echoing their hatred. Meanwhile, Itachi, resigned to his fate, told Dororo he hoped to see the treasure before his soul departed. Just then, they saw Ora standing on a cliff, who revealed he had come to witness everything. He threw down a torch, triggering an explosion that shattered the mountain, sending rocks crashing down on the soldiers. As the dust settled, Hyakkimaru managed to escape, but Tahamaru ordered his men to retreat. When the smoke cleared, Hyakkimaru began searching for Dororo. Dororo and Itachi awoke in a cave, and to their surprise, the treasure lay right before their eyes. But as Itachi reached for the gold, his soul left his body. Dororo, realizing he was gone, said her goodbyes and told Hyakkimaru she had no idea what to do with the wealth now. That night, they set sail away from the island. A week later, Tahamaru learned that villages were beginning to starve, and epidemics spread once more. Hyogo suggested the demons were behind it all, punishing them for failing to kill Hyakkimaru. Tahamaru believed only the demons could reveal the truth and decided they would head to the Hall of Demons, where Daigo statues were kept. Meanwhile, across the world, Dororo noticed that fall had arrived. She reflected on how it was the first time she had truly noticed the changing seasons. As they rested, a man appeared on the mountain, asking if they were searching for demons. When Dororo questioned him, he introduced himself as Saburo, explaining he had been hunting a powerful demon for months. He revealed a scar from the beast, which had killed his mother. Now he sought revenge. Hyakkimaru, skeptical of Saburo's tale, decided to leave, but Saburo insisted on leading them to the top of a mountain, saying the beast always appeared there. When they reached the summit, the monster appeared on a rock, and Dororo realized this was no ordinary demon. Hyakkimaru, recognizing it as a demon, immediately charged at it. The beast retaliated, swinging its massive fist, but Hyakkimaru dodged. As he leapt backward, he saw the serpent-like tail heading straight for Dororo. In a split second, he intervened, saving her from certain death. He blocked Saburo's attack, forcing the man to retreat. Dororo thought he must have lost his mind and wondered why he was siding with the demon. So he revealed that he was its servant and said that he offered everyone as a snack to even the loss of his mother. Just then, the beast began charging at them, but Hyakkimaru jumped out of its way, causing it to smash into the rock. Before they knew it, the cliff broke and the rocks crumbled to the ground. A few minutes later, as Dororo regained consciousness, she realized that her arm was stuck in the rubble. As she tried to pull it out, they discovered that water was starting to spring out of the ground and realized that the place would be flooded in only a matter of time. Hoping to save her, Hyakkimaru tried to pull out her arm, but as he fell back, Dororo realized that his fake arms were far too useless. Even so, Hyakkimaru would not quit and tried pushing the boulder, but in only a short time a pool formed around them and his cast began to break. Afraid he would not stop, Dororo tried telling him that she would escape on her own, but more water started gushing and nearly overwhelmed her. Desperate to save her, Hyakkimaru pushed even harder until his cast completely broke and Dororo began to drown. As his desperation increased, Hyakkimaru tried smashing the rock, but even this was futile. However, Money appeared just in time and stabbed his sword into the boulder, cracking it and reaching Dororo immediately. He revealed that he was just within the area and was happy to have made it here just in time. Hyakkimaru wasted no time with words and left, discarding his prosthetic arms. He climbed the mountain and Saburo, curious about his survival, asked how he managed it. Hyakkimaru simply stated that he was there to destroy the demon. Without warning, the beast leaped at him, but Hyakkimaru raised his swords and struck with precision. The monster recoiled, but Hyakkimaru pursued, slashing again in a desperate attempt to finish it off. Saburo lunged at him with his sword, but Hyakkimaru blocked the attack, throwing him aside effortlessly. He then leaped onto the beast, cutting its face in half. Saburo watched in awe, wishing he could be as powerful. He regretted not being able to save his mother in such a way. As Hyakkimaru ready to finish the beast, Saburo tackled him, lamenting his own failure as a warrior. In that moment, the demon devoured Saburo, vanishing before Hyakkimaru could strike. The beast grew wings and an eerie face emerged from its body, its powerful aura now surrounding it. It flew toward Hyakkimaru, but he stood resolute, determined to defeat it. Minutes later, Dororo arrived at the mountain and found the severed serpent tail. Following the trail of blood, she discovered the beast's dismembered parts scattered around. She realized Hyakimaru had completely annihilated the demon, his sword lodged in Saburo's body. Saburo, in his final moments, understood that Hyakimaru was no longer human. As Hyakimaru decapitated the demon, no new body part grew. He kept stabbing the beast, determined to ensure it was truly dead. As Dororo tried to stop him, he began screaming for his body and continued stabbing the beast like it was a large chunk of meat. Meanwhile, Tahamaru and his men arrived inside the Hall of Demons, and before their eyes another statue began to crack, leaving only one standing. Right then, Hyakimaru began to leave when Dororo asked him where he was headed. He told her that Daigo was the last demon and that he needed to kill his father to finally become human. Watch the next video. Till next time, let's do some plot development and like the video, and don't forget to subscribe the channel.